Hey everyone, welcome back to the MainStage Starter course. Today is lesson 3. We're reaching the halfway point. If you need to review either of the past 2 days' lessons, just scroll down on the page and you can rewatch those videos or watch them for the first time if you missed either of the previous 2 days. I hope that you've also been engaging in the Sunday Sounds Insiders Facebook group if you've had any questions about the content from lesson 1 or lesson 2. Today's lesson is going to be really great. We're going to start to talk about how you can customize your setup using MainStage. MainStage is unprecedented in the level of control in the moment that you can have. It's really, really great. It can be a little bit confusing getting started, so this lesson is really going to help you understand how layout mode and your workspace interact with the channel strips that you create in MainStage. So you're definitely going to want to take some notes during this video, or at least bookmark this page so that you can come back and watch it later if you need a refresher. Okay, I'm going to turn around. We're going to go to a screen share and start to talk about customization. Alright everyone, so today in lesson 3 of the starter course, we're going to really dig into how you can start to customize your MainStage concert to give you the type of control that you want to have to dial things in advance or on the fly. Now we're using the concert file that we created through yesterday's lesson, and that's available as a download right below this video. So go ahead and download that file. It's a zip folder, so you're going to double click on it to unzip it after you've downloaded it. And then you're going to see a file with the file extension .concert. So just double click on that concert file and it will open up in MainStage. Or if you already have MainStage open, you can click on File and choose Open, and then navigate to that concert file on your hard drive. So we are in edit mode. If you missed yesterday's lesson, go back and check that out. But just a quick review, we talked about how MainStage has 3 modes: edit mode, perform mode, and layout mode. Layout mode is the first step in actually customizing your MainStage concerts to give you the type of control that you want. So we're going to go over to layout mode here. So layout mode has 3 main areas. Over here on the left, you have the screen control inspector. And the biggest part of the screen, you have the layout, which is your actual workspace. And then at the bottom, you have your screen control palette. And you can drag that up if you want to be able to see a little bit more. And you've got several tabs of screen controls. Now, we're going to delete most of what's here on screen really quickly. So I'm going to click and drag over all of this stuff. And then I'm going to hit delete. And I'm also going to drag this down here and delete that. And then I'm going to grab these 2 pedals here, the sustain pedal and the expression pedal, drag them off to the left or to the right. And then I'm going to grab this keyboard. I'm just clicking and dragging for all of this, and I'm going to stick it down at the bottom. Okay, so you have several different tabs here. You have panel controls, shelf controls, grouped controls, which have some of the work already done for you, and then the all controls tab. There's also another tab that you might see called user controls. As you design group controls of your own, later you can save them and be able to access them in the future, but that's a bit beyond the scope of this course. For right now, we are going to start by grabbing this bank of 8 vertical faders, and we're going to drag it on screen. So you just click and drag. And that's really nice. So let's say that we're also going to grab these 8 round knobs, and we're going to stick them right above. Layout mode can be a little bit glitchy, but it does have these guides that will pop up that can help you get things lined up. And you can also right-click on any element to view some alignment or distribution options if you want to make things really nice and clean. Then I'm going to grab 8 buttons here. So you can really get super creative with the way that you set up your layout, but I'm just doing this as a pretty generic option. And the basic principle of assigning is really straightforward. So when you've created your workspace here, it doesn't mean anything until you've actually given it some significance. You have to tell MainStage, I want my physical controllers to interact with the on-screen workspace. So in order to do that, you select the control that you want, and then you're going to make what's called an assignment. You can only make assignments in layout mode, and an assignment represents a connection between a physical control and something on screen. So basically, in layman's terms, when I move this fader on my MIDI controller, I want it to control this on-screen fader. So to do that, you simply select the control and then press the Assign button up here at the top left in the Screen Control Inspector. And you'll notice that the Assign button turns red, as well as the outline of the control. And then you're just going to move your physical hardware. So I'm moving a fader on my keyboard. And as soon as you do that, it's going to start to pick up that behavior on screen. So you would repeat this process for everything else that you wanted to assign. So as many controls as you wanted to have on screen, you could assign them to your hardware. And when you're done, just unselect Assign so that you don't accidentally undo that assignment. And then you'll see that now I have control over this fader, which is really great. So now when we go over to edit mode, I can move that on-screen fader. And you may notice that it's moving these channel strip faders down here in the bottom right. But that is not how most faders will behave. I happen to be using the volume fader on my keyboard, so it's going to automatically control these volumes. But that's not going to be the case 99.9% of the time. And really quickly, in a second here, it's going to become irrelevant as we actually tell MainStage what we want this fader to do. So there's two basic steps to taking control here. First is making an assignment to something on screen in layout mode, which we've already done. So that's called an assignment. When I move my physical fader, it moves something on screen. The second connection is when the on-screen control moves, it affects X, Y, or Z parameter on a given channel strip. So let's say that we're going to go to a new untitled patch, and we're going to add a channel strip. We're going to create an instrument channel strip here. I'm going to go to the channel strip library. I'm going to go down to Vintage Electric Piano, and I'm just going to choose this Deluxe Modern. So now, let's say that I want to be able to control the volume of this channel strip in the moment. So to do this, all you need to do is create a mapping. Again, a mapping is a connection between an on-screen workspace control and any parameter on a channel strip that you'd like to be able to adjust. So I'm going to click this on-screen fader, and this is very similar to how you make an assignment in layout mode. To make a mapping, you have to be in edit mode. You click the control, it's going to highlight in blue. You choose map parameter, it's going to highlight in red. See that map parameter here is down in this screen control inspector, and it says unmapped. So I'm going to map this parameter. Then I just click on the control that I want to map it to. So I'm going to choose this volume fader right here. And then I'm going to deselect map parameter. So now, when I move my physical volume fader on my keyboard, in layout mode, I've told MainStage that I want my physical fader to control that fader on screen. And then in edit mode, I've told MainStage that I want that on-screen fader to control the volume of this channel strip. This is all there is to controlling things from your physical hardware in MainStage in real time. So you make two connections, from your hardware to your workspace in layout mode, and then from your workspace to a channel strip parameter in edit mode. So when you have a mapping made, you can view the details of that mapping by selecting the on-screen control. You can see that you have three options here for the saved value, that's where it's going to start, the max range, which I like to set to 0 dB, and then the minimum range, which right now is set to -infinity. But if I didn't want to be able to turn it all the way down and I just wanted it to get quieter, I could adjust the minimum range. And I could adjust the maximum range too if I didn't want it to ever get that loud. There's all sorts of things you can do here. You take pretty in-depth control. So that's that. I've created a mapping to this on-screen control, and now I can bring the volume in or out just by moving that on-screen fader. So that's pretty cool, but I'm going to go ahead and delete this mapping. I'm just going to click block, and that eliminates the mapping. I'm going to move this fader back up to 0. So making a volume mapping is a pretty elementary way to control. It's really great to be able to do that in real time on the fly. Let's say that you wanted to get a little bit creative. You might remember yesterday that I added a reverb to one of the sounds at the last little bit of the video. It sounded pretty cool. So I'm going to click on the audio effects section here. I'm going to scroll down to reverb, and I'm going to choose Silververb. Again, this is my favorite reverb plugin. So now we could tweak things here I'll bring the dry all the way up, and this is how it sounds. It's got a nice bit of reverb on it, but let's say that I wanted to be able to control how much reverb we hear in the moment. So to do this, I can make a mapping between any of these on-screen controls and anything within this plugin. Remember, this plugin is on the channel strip, so there's no reason I can't map to it. So I'm going to hit the on-screen control I want to map to, and I'm going to choose Map Parameter, and then I'm going to click on the on-screen control for the wet output. And I'm going to deselect Map Parameter. Now when I move my physical fader, you'll see that the on-screen control is moving, and that the actual plugin parameter control is moving as well. So that's really great. Now, another thing is that you can add more than one mapping to the same on-screen control. So I'm going to hit the plus button down here in the inspector, and we're going to choose Map Parameter again. And I'm going to click on the dry control this time. So right now, they're going to move in unison. That's not really anything special. But when you click Invert Parameter Range for the dry, you get this effect. Which is really cool. Now, if you decided you didn't want either of those mappings, you could just hit the X. And if you don't want any mappings at all, then you can just click Block. And it's going to go back to nothing at all. The main point is that you're only limited by your creativity when it comes to mapping. There's also no reason that you can't map multiple channel strips to the same control. So let's add another channel strip. And we're going to grab a pad. We're just going to go to the Airways pad again because we know how it sounds. Bring the volume down a little bit. So now I'm going to make a mapping. I'm going to choose Map Parameter, and I'm going to click on the electric piano volume. I'm going to set the max range to 0. Then I'm going to add another mapping, and I'm going to select the volume of the Airways channel strip. The saved value defaults to whatever the current parameter value is, which happens to be negative 4.8 for this channel strip. And I know that this pad is a little bit louder than the electric piano, so I'm going to set the max range to be negative 4.8 as well. You can use the slider, or you can click in the box and just type in what you want it to be. So now when I move this fader, it's going to incrementally adjust both of those parameters. Which gives you a lot of hands-on control. The ability to adjust multiple parameters at once. There's not a lot of limitations on the mappings. You can make up to 16 mappings to an individual on-screen control. Although that could get pretty confusing, so I don't know if I'd go up that high very often. So let's go over here to this greatest patch ever that we worked on yesterday. And we had this calming bells layer up on the right end. Let's say that we wanted to be able to control whether or not we heard that sound. So I'm going to click this on-screen fader. I'm going to choose Map Parameter. And then I'm going to click on the on-screen channel strip volume for the calming bells channel strip. And then I'm going to deselect Map Parameter so I don't accidentally override that mapping. I'm going to set the max value to 0, but I'm going to leave the save value at negative 7. This gives me some wiggle room, so I could have it all the way off. I could bring it in a little bit, or I could make it a lot more prominent. So this is something that you could do, and then you'd be able to adjust the volume up front during rehearsal, or if you wanted to, you could use this as a musical tool actually in live performance to be able to make adjustments to be dynamic and fluid on the fly. So just one more time to recap, there's 2 steps to controlling MainStage from your physical hardware in real time. First, you have to make an assignment. That's a connection between your physical hardware and something that you've added to your on-screen workspace. You can add stuff to your workspace however you'd like in layout mode by just dragging something on screen from the screen control palette. So if I wanted to add an individual vertical fader, I could just grab it, stick it right there. You hit assign, and then you move the physical control that you want MainStage to listen to and control that on-screen item. The second step, is to add significance to that on-screen control so that when that on-screen control is moved by your hardware, it actually controls a parameter within a channel strip. Now, you may have already observed this, but I haven't spoken it overtly. You can make different mappings per patch. So on this Deluxe Modern patch, we're controlling the volume of both of these layers with this fader right here. But when we go to the Greatest Patch Ever, we're only controlling the volume of that Calming Bells layer. So when you change patches, you can also change mappings. So yesterday, I tried to really thoroughly explain how patches don't generate audio, but they can contain channel strips that generate audio. The second thing that's true of a patch is that it can contain mappings between your on-screen workspace and channel strip parameters. So you can have different mappings per patch, as well as different sounds and combinations of channel strips per patch. So the patch is a really great way to be able to quickly make drastic changes to your sound and also to the way that your hardware interacts with the software. This is one of the huge, amazing concepts that makes MainStage so powerful and so flexible. So that's why we devoted an entire lesson to it today. Now, we're going to make this concert file in its current state, minus this entirely superfluous volume fader, which I'm going to select in layout mode and delete by hitting delete on my keyboard. Right as it looks right now, I'm going to make this available to you as a download in tomorrow's lesson so that you'll be able to follow along and have this as your starting point as you continue to explore MainStage. All right, that wraps up lesson 3. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Once you gather this concept, channel strips and how they interact with your workspace, then you have a whole world of options available to you in MainStage. You can start to run into problems though, because how MainStage is so open-ended, it lets you do so much. It can be possible to push things too far or to push MainStage too hard, and that can start to cause some issues. So tomorrow we're going to talk about stability and performance, because the whole point of this is to be able to use MainStage live, correct? And if you can't use it live without worrying about things going wrong, then what's the point? So tomorrow's going to be a really important video for you to tune into. The last thing I'll say before I wrap up lesson 3 today is we'd really appreciate it if you spread the word about this course with friends of yours that are also keyboard players or worship musicians who might enjoy learning more about what MainStage can do. So grab the link to the page that you signed up for the course on from our website, sundaysounds.com/mainstage-starter-course. Then we would really appreciate it if you spread the word so that we can have some more people really starting to understand what MainStage can do. So we appreciate you spreading the word about that. Okay, make sure that you don't miss tomorrow's lesson. Check your email inbox for the link to lesson 4, where we talk about making sure that everything you do is actually going to translate when it comes time to perform live. We'll see you tomorrow.